Welcome, my friends, to the 100th episode of the Machine Shop Mastery Podcast. This is quite a milestone. I cannot believe we are here. I am incredibly grateful to the community for supporting this show and helping us get to this place. I'm particularly grateful to the guests, the leaders, the owners of these businesses that shared their amazing stories.
Welcome to the Machine Shop Mastery Podcast, where we uncover the stories behind successful machine shops and their owners. By interviewing current and former shop owners, we dig deep to unveil their secrets of success and the struggles and challenges they've overcome on their paths to building thriving shops. We aim to elevate how important the machining industry is and inspire others by highlighting why owning a shop can be a great vehicle to creating jobs, stimulating the economy, and creating wealth. Here's our host, former machine shop owner himself, Paul Van Meter.
When I started this podcast, I thought it was going to be a show about trying to understand what makes great shops great. And sure, we've spent over 100 hours talking about 5-axis machining and Swiss turning and culture and systems and all those things that drive performance. But as I look back on the first 99 episodes, what I realize is something really important, that we weren't really talking about making parts. We were talking about the human soul of the American economy. Over these episodes, I've been deeply moved by the passion, the grit of the leaders that sat across from me who carry enormous responsibility on their shoulders. I've heard stories of owners who sold their own homes during economic crises just to keep the doors open, leaders who borrowed $1 million at their personal risk so not a single person on their team would lose their jobs. This is not just about business. That's commitment. That's family. We've talked about the gorilla hands of the fathers who built this industry, about the comforting smell of a machine shop and the coolant that stays with you from the time you're 5 years old. And we've learned again and again that a machine shop isn't just a place where metal gets cut. It's a place where people are built. Helping 28 employees buy their first homes, mentoring a machinist who goes on to become a pilot, creating opportunity, dignity, and pride through work that matters. And maybe the most powerful thing of all is the collaborative spirit that runs through the industry. A brotherhood and sisterhood that understands that a rising tide really does lift all boats. Competitors shipping gauges overnight to save each other's contracts, owners spending Sunday mornings at a local brewery just to really listen to their team's goals and dreams. That willingness to share, to give back, to raise the bar together has created something bigger than a podcast. It is a deep body of collective wisdom. So this episode 100 is not just the finish line. It's a marker. It's a moment to pause, a moment to say thank you to all those that have listened and have shared on the show. This industry is the bedrock of our economy. You've heard me say that so often. And the men and the women who run these shops are quiet heroes. Thank you for trusting me with your stories and your lessons and your triumphs. Here's to the next 100, and let's go ahead and get into it here with some of the best ideas from the first 99 episodes. All right, this first clip is actually from episode number 1 with Scott Shortess, and it's all about the power of process. I've long talked about why it's so important, and many guests have talked about why it's so important to be a process-based organization. I think it's so foundational. I want it to be idea number 1. So let's get into this one with Scott.
And doing a lot of reading. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is from Edward Deming. You know, a bad process will break a good person every time. And
that is a good one.
Unfortunately, you know, I've broken some good people by not having processes in place. Mm-hmm. And as the leader of the company, you got to own that and get that fixed and get the right people in place to get processes implemented. Even though, I think there's so many times where people think that, okay, we've got the process set, done, walk away from it. No.
Just the beginning.
You got to feed it, you got to take care of it, and you got to change it. So, we've been blessed also with, the past 3, we've had no findings. Just we had a finding here most recently, and it was related to, getting corrective actions closed out in a timely manner. And if you really believe in the corrective action, the RCCA process, that's another tool So we've been issuing more and more corrective actions internally. When something doesn't go right, issue an RCA, get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go figure out what the problem is, get it fixed.
All right. I love that clip. I think the idea that you not only have to build a process, but then you have to have a process for improving your process, right? He talks about the RCCA, or the root cause corrective action process, is really important. So take a shot every time I say process. Yeah, good points there. Let's move on to this next clip. This is episode 35 with Dave Capkovitz, when he owned his shop CK Tool. Dave is now a part of EBITDA Growth Systems and a good partner of mine here at ProShop. But yeah, let's listen to Dave in episode 35 here.
Everything was process-based. My quality guy was fantastic about holding me accountable to make sure, are we following the process? And I got so close to that, I wound up trusting the process more than my gut. And that transformation was exponential in profit. Because then I started, instead of working on my gut feel what was wrong, I would analyze the process. And the process would tell me what's wrong and what I need to do.
All right, a shorty but a goodie. What I think is important about that clip is that Dave talks about, rather than going by gut feel, he started focusing on the data and following a process. And what he said was that transformation was exponential in profit. And that's the key takeaway from that clip. It is far more profitable to be a process-based organization than an organization that wings it, that goes off gut feel alone, that doesn't look at the data, that doesn't focus on that improvement aspect of being a process-based organization. So I hope that resonates with you. I think it's such a critical aspect of having an enduring business. So that's number one. Hey, it's Paul from Making Chips. If you've been burned by recruiters who don't understand manufacturing, you are not alone. That's exactly why we created Hire MFG Leaders. We're not just recruiters, we're current and former shop owners, and we know what it takes to lead in this industry. Whether you're hiring your next operations leader, sales manager, or production supervisor, we'll help you find someone who actually fits. Learn more at makingchips.com/hire. All right, number 2, we are going to talk next about culture, core values as a foundation of the business. The first clip we're going to listen to is episode number 22 from John and Eric from KMM Group. So let's get into it.
We absolutely say it's the most important piece of our company. It is the glue. 10 years ago, it was a Vistage speaker that we had, and they said your culture of your company is like dirt. And I'm like, what? Like dirt? He goes, if you tend it and take care of it and fertilize it, you can plant anything in it and it'll grow. Mm-hmm. If you don't pay attention to it, it's kind of potluck. I never forgot that, and that really solidified I was in the formative stages of trying to think about what the culture was, what shape it was going to take and how it was going to be tangible to the employees.
All right. Great quote from John and Eric, episode 22 from KMM Group. What I love about this quote is how unromantic and practical it is, right? Culture isn't just a slogan. It's not a poster. You don't just throw it up on the wall and forget about it. I love that quote. It's like dirt. If you tend it, if you cultivate it, if you fertilize it, you protect it, it will grow anything, just like a garden does. Great people, strong teams, resilient systems, even through hard times, right? But if you ignore it and you assume it just will work out, then whatever grows is random. Just like a garden, it grows weeds. Sometimes it doesn't grow anything at all because it's just so barren. And that is not what we want in our businesses. We want the culture to be fertile enough that the right people and the right ideas and the right outcomes are what grows in that fertile dirt of your culture. And it's got to be intentional, right? You have to invest in it all the time. You cannot just, again, throw it up on a wall and expect everyone to follow it. The leaders have to practice it. They have to show it. They have to applaud people that are using the culture, the values, and exhibiting those and exemplifying those in their work. So I love that one. Let's get into another clip here. This is from Justin Quinn, episode number 4. Justin is with Focused on Machining near Colorado, or in Colorado near Denver. This one's a little bit longer, but he gets into some more practical things about employees and good fit versus bad fit, and how that all plays out with culture and values.
I would kind of reiterate and focus on some of the things that I didn't think were super important, like the core values. I always kind of felt like I should have them, but never really put much importance on them until I spent a lot of time to really develop them, like putting a lot of time and effort into them. And what resulted is now we have a set of core values that we take everything back to, right? When we're dealing with employee issues, we go back to the core values, right? And one of the things that is really kind of weird for me still is like, there's great machinists out there, but they might not be a good culture fit for us, right? And before I had these developed, it's like we would never let go a good machinist, even if everybody hated them and they piss everybody off every day. It's like, well, they make good parts, so just try to ignore them. Now we make decisions differently, right? And it's like, you're a fantastic machinist, but you're cancer to our culture. You either need to change and change these things and come over to our culture, or you got to go. And what I found is in those instances where we've had to let someone go because of culture, the team really rallies around that, and they're more willing to come together to cover that gap than they are to cover for the person that pisses them off every day. So having those values defined, it allows us to make decisions easier. And it allows, as the owner, as these are the things that keep me up at night, right? Like these are the things that, what am I going to do about this person? Or, we've got this customer that is just killing us. And what are we going to do about this? It's so easy to take it back to the core values and be like, are they a good fit for our culture, for who we are? If they're not, you have to make the decision to move on. And it's hard to do that the first couple times. But what you realize is the culture of your shop will prosper, and that culture will cover up for the lack of employee at the time. And it's just a happier work environment to be in. The employees are happier. They'll work harder. If you, I've told many of my employees, is like, I don't want to make this decision, but I think it's the best for the company. So it's going to suck, right? Like these next couple of months is going to suck because we're not going to have somebody in this role, but we're going to find the right person. And 6 months from now, we'll be in a better spot. I just need your help getting through these next couple of months. And they will rally around that. They will say, absolutely, we'll do anything we can. Like just get rid of this person, sometimes. Yeah, just having those core values, the culture defined. It's having a well-defined culture that people lean on and love will take your business to heights that you never thought it could go. It's really powerful, surprisingly powerful.
All right. What a great clip from Justin. What I want to point out about this clip is that not only did he talk about culture, but he really roots it in the core values of the business and how critical those are for making all decisions around a business. So if you have those core values and then you hire according to those core values, then you're much less likely to be in the situation where he described, or you sometimes have to make a decision to let perhaps a very talented employee go because they're just toxic to your culture. But when that does happen, and if it does happen, you just you got to make the tough calls sometimes to let someone go. But what I love how he talks about that the rest of the folks will step up to the plate if they really do believe in those values and that culture. And what it points to me is that you can weather more things, more challenges, more difficulties when you have a great culture and people that are really bought into and aligned. They will step up to do their part, and you're not left as the owner trying to sort of fight this battle on your own. So I thought that was a really good one. I don't have the time. This episode will get far too long if we share a ton more clips, but here's just a few more sentiments that I want to share that I found in some of the other episodes. Keith Bernardo at M&K Engineering said, there's not a lot of people that can manage people and build a culture that's special. Lots of people can make parts, but building a culture that's special is somewhat rare. Cody Guidry at Coastal Machines said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I thought that was a great one. And I've been there a number of times. They have an incredibly caring culture, and it is truly a special place. Steve from Paramount Machines said one of the significant takeaways in his early career was that people mean everything. And then Luke Wittenbrocker from MacTech said that it seems to be really ubiquitous indicator of strong financial performance is companies that have a strong culture. Mike Tomasi at AccuRound said he uses a true north equation and says human development plus velocity drives growth. And he asserts that there's nothing more important in his company than its culture. Ty Hegwood from MTI said he believes leadership should follow a holistic model, treating team members with the same respect, communication, and accolades as they would treat a spouse or a child. And then Denny Smith from Northside Machine said you have to surround yourself with good people, getting them more involved and turning them loose on some stuff. I love that. That's the idea that I just shared. If you have a great team, you can delegate to them. They're going to pick it up and run with it. You're not going to be stuck just doing it on your own. Barry Walter from Barry Walter Manufacturing has said you can change your mission, you can change your vision, but you cannot change your core values. Those should be buried in the ground as deep as possible in concrete. Anissa from Pioneer Services, she says core values as the ultimate filter, noting that even highly talented individuals must be asked to leave if they are not aligned with the company's values, and in their case, such as outreach and stewardship, which is exactly what Justin shared. Travis Moore from Gemco said he believes that with established core values, difficult business decisions become easy because you have a clear standard for behaviors like craftsmanship or courtesy in their case. So one thing that sort of came up as an idea, sort of a metaphor or analogy, whatever those are called, is that trying to build a world-class shop without a strong culture is like trying to machine a complex part on a machine that has a cracked foundation. No matter how high-end tools you're using or great software, it's going to be impossible to build a high-precision part, hold those tolerances if you have a crack in your foundation. And I think that's especially pertinent. You cannot have a great, strong business if you have cracks in your foundation of your culture. So anyway, that's enough about culture. Let's move on to the next major pillar here, and that is the strategic advantage and critical nature of planning. I don't mean planning long-term. That is also, of course, critical. I'm talking about job planning, process planning, and what a huge differentiator that makes on the shop floor. The first clip we're going to hear about this is Mark Heston from episode 51. It was a great episode. Mark's very insightful on this. So let's go listen to that clip right now.
Then we, really attacked the scheduling of the shop. You got to be on time to your customers. Mm-hmm. So really operational throughput was first. So we brought in a planner and we redid the scheduling process, really doubled down on, operational improvements there.
I'd love to ask you a little bit more about bringing on a planner and moving some of your folks up into the engineering. One of the dynamics that I think is often the case in shops, especially as they are on their maturity path, there's sometimes a reluctance, maybe not a reluctance, but not a realization about the value of more proactive planning and engineering on a project versus just win the job, throw it over the wall to manufacturing and good luck because they're, skilled at what they do. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the investment in planning and more upfront engineering as a way to increase throughput and profitability and overall performance of the business?
It was just like anything. Like my favorite quote in the world is it's an Abe Lincoln quote. And it says, if you give me 5 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend the first 4 hours sharpening my axe. Like there's no better analogy for me than in aerospace. Like everything we do is very deliberate. It's very long, challenging. You have to have a good plan in this industry. So having a plan, having a schedule, having a forecast is everything in this business. So when we brought on a planner, we really wanted someone who to come in and we wanted someone who had aerospace experience. We wanted somebody who could hit the ground running because we were looking for somebody to, basically build a department up. Yeah, it's been a life-changing, piece of data. For example, I would say last year we did, the last 3 months of last year, 2022, we did about, say, $1 million. Well, this last quarter, with our fully planned now, we did, double that. So order book stayed about the same. We didn't really have any much difference in work in front of us. That's just the true numbers of our plan coming to fruition now.
Right. Yeah. And so what are some of the ways that manifests itself in that throughput? Is it faster setup times? Is it better quality? Is it just better spindle utilization? Is it a bit of all those things or anything particularly jump out to you?
We track a wide variety of all those things. We track labor hours per setup guy. We track, total hours per machine. We track, efficiencies, utilization, and basically they all go up with better plans. Setups go faster. It actually got to the point where we were going so fast that labor became a constraint because we just couldn't set up machines fast enough. We were just going through them so quick. We're like, we've never had a problem where like we had, too many machines in a setup at once because we're just blowing through jobs so quickly. There's no more of like waiting for material to come in. So the way it works is we run like project engineers. So we have a, turning and milling side. And when a part gets awarded, Brian, our lead engineer, will assign it to whoever's the project engineer himself, Josh, whoever. And then they basically, from cradle to grave, create the inspection plan, all the gauging, the tool list, the programming, fixturing, method manufacturing, the routing. They also do the what we call a baseline, which is they go through all the specs, ASL, contract review. So by the time it hits the floor, the part has been programmed, engineered, fixtured, tools are here, inspection sheets, gauges, the inspection plan, FAI plan, everything is laid out, solid models, op sketches, placards, everything is done for that hits the floor. So it's a nice buttoned up package of technical data where any Joe Schmo should be able to take it, set it up, and hit the ground running with little involvement.
All right. So that was actually made up of 4 different clips interspersed throughout the episode, and we just kind of pieced it together in something that was a little bit of a cohesive flow there. So you can clearly see the impact of focusing deeply on this upfront process planning that Mark talks about. The proof's in the pudding. He went from $1 million in a quarter to double that the following quarter by implementing this process plan. And it wasn't from new work because they were more busy. It's the same backlog, same kind of work. There's just absolutely ripping through work to the point where, different weaknesses, different bottlenecks pop up in the value chain, whether it's material or quality or people. So that really does I think ring true for me that over my, career, 30 plus years in the machining industry, one of the biggest differentiators of shops that execute and shops that don't is how mature their process planning function is. So, I've definitely heard the argument that we don't have time for that. We don't have the money to put into that, but I will promise you it's a major return many times over. If you put in an hour up in planning, you're going to get it back many hours back on the back end. So hopefully that one was useful to you. Again, don't have time to add a ton more clips, but I just wanted to share a few ideas that different people shared on other episodes. This sharpen the axe philosophy is just so critical. Mark obviously talked about it. And another proof point of that is taking the lead time for complex parts from 26 weeks down to just 6 weeks for a similarly complicated part. Brad Kozlowski, in his episode, talked about de-risking through documentation and doing very thorough process control on the front end. I know that's true at Kozlowski Advanced Manufacturing, now called Adman Advanced Metals in North Carolina there. I've been there multiple times. Sometimes they are starting with parts that cost $50,000 in printing cost alone before they even start machining it. So they absolutely have to get it right. And a really detailed process plan is the way they do that. Of course, Scott Shortess also talks about process. Let's see, this idea of standardized tooling. Nate Ankrum talked about it, and Robert Smith also talked about it on their respective episodes. Standardized tool libraries for different material types allows a machinist to lock and load a job because the fixturing and the tool paths are already proven. James Marzilli, my buddy Jamie, describes how building an internal Wikipedia type page for storing SOPs and manufacturing data to ensure that tribal knowledge is accessible to everybody, and so they can then follow a proven, well-documented process as well. Let's see, what else do I have here for notes? Matt Golick talks about the simplicity in design. Genius isn't always complex. Most of the time it's simple. And he advocates for designing processes that fit together perfectly without having to manually sort of fit things at the end. And then my longtime business partner and co-founder Kelsey, back in the Pro CNC days, talked about the 3% improvement rule, how we had a requirement that all employees needed to spend 3% of their time tracking against system improvements. And oftentimes that meant documenting processes, making sure things are set up, repeatable, bulletproof, and efficient. So this analogy at the end here, job planning is like a musical score for an orchestra. Without the score, or the process plan in this case, even the most talented musicians will produce discordant noises, chaos and scrap. When the score is expertly composed and documented on the front end, the conductor can step away and the orchestra will still produce a masterpiece. That was, I think, Dwayne Dwyer in his episode. So hopefully that feels important to you. I can tell you again from all my years of experience, it is one of the most fundamentally important things. So hopefully you embrace that and go focus on process control in your company. In manufacturing, growth isn't accidental, it's engineered. But a lot of suppliers are still building their pipeline on outdated lists, inconsistent follow-up, and hope-based marketing, hoping their website will somehow bring in leads. Gabe Draper, the founder of Factur, knows that struggle. Years ago, he ran a shop that went bankrupt, not because of quality, but because he didn't have a steady way to generate new opportunities. That experience is what led him to build Factur. Factur helps suppliers create consistent sales opportunities by combining targeted outreach with marketing that puts you in front of the right buyers. Their team finds the right companies, starts real conversations, and sets qualified meetings. So if your pipeline swings with referrals or seasonality, Factur brings a system that puts you back in control. And for listeners of this show, Factur is offering a free custom report that highlights the best opportunities in your industry, plus a list of real companies that match what you do. Request yours at facturmfg.com/chips. That's FACTUR mfg.com/chips. All right. The next section, number 4, is about building a business that doesn't need you. And I know it's an interesting idea, but stick with me here. The first clip we're going to hear is one from Mike Fritz from Quick Tech Machining. And he suggests that everyone should run their business like they're going to sell it. So let's go listen to this one, and then we'll dig in and analyze a little bit more afterwards. This is from episode number 58. His actually second. We did 2 in a row with Mike, and it was so good on the first one, we just rolled right into a second episode. So here it is from episode 58 with Mike Fritz.
First of all, every single shop owner, in my opinion, I learned more by buying a shop on how to run it, how to grow it, how to make it valuable than I have by running one. And so by going through that process, I learned what does actually make a business more valuable. And so if I could give just one like overarching, let's say somebody's listening today and say, Paul, Mike, I'm not really going to go buy more businesses and buy more shops. Okay, that's fine. But I will tell you this, everybody should run their business like they're going to sell it. You should run your business so that a person like me would want to come in and buy it. And the only reason I say that is because it will force you to put in SOPs, KPIs, SOPs being standard operating procedures, KPIs, your key performance indicators. If you're not familiar with those acronyms, you'll get all those things in, putting in a complete doc list of like all of your HR documents, all of your like what happens when we hire a lathe operator? What happens the first 4 days of training? Is that documented? The kinds of things I'm realizing I need to be putting in my shop, I didn't know until I actually bought one. And so the process taught me so much about what makes these shops valuable, what buyers are looking for, and how to run it effectively. So let's say you're running a shop in Oklahoma and you're 45 years old and your retirement's not really around the corner. And you're like, yeah, I love doing what I do. That's awesome. We love having you in the industry, but build your shop like you're going to sell it because it's going to be way more valuable no matter what you do. If you give it to your kids or you keep it in the family or a nephew comes up and runs it or a niece, whatever, building it like you're going to sell it gives you the ability to step away. Because the only way, the number one thing I look for when I'm coming in to buy a company is how self-sufficient is it from the owner's operations. We call that decoupling in our industry. How decoupled is the success of the industry, of the shop from the owner's time? the more you can separate that, the higher the value of the company is. And so now you can set up, whether it's Pro Shop, get Pro Shop in your company, get it in there, get your stuff and get some procedures in place. So I would say the first thing before we even talk about how to buy a business is that everybody should run their business like they're going to sell it.
Well, I want to focus on that a second longer, because it's not just the difference between a higher and lower valuation. Because I know from talking to a number of people in the industry and M&A that oftentimes the difference is being able to sell your business at all or not, right?
Oh, that's a great point.
Like a lot of shop owners have their idea that someday they will sell it and exit potentially if they don't have kids or someone that wants to take it over. And that's going to be their nest egg that carries them into the rest of their life.
Absolutely.
And if
that's
you
a big event for them.
If you cannot actually sell it, it's just not saleable. Not enough people are willing to spend what you want to sell it for, or just doesn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. That's a huge problem.
That is a problem.
And so how can we help people avoid that negative outcome in the future by doing the key steps years in advance that are, like you said, are going to make the business more profitable anyway, easier to run, take more vacations, get out of the weeds every day, decouple yourself from the essential daily tasks.
Yeah, that's so good, man. And I hadn't even thought about it from that perspective, but you're 100% right. A lot of times these shops are pieced off at an auction, a lot of the machines, and maybe the real estate sold.
Pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you and I are like, it's almost like a sucker punch to us, because it's like, oh my gosh, that anytime you put a bunch of machines in one place with operators, that is a valuable thing, whether it has worked yet or not. So to just see it pieced off is like, it's like taking a piece of my heart. I'm like, oh no, please don't do that.
Oh my gosh, so good, right? The idea that if you run your business as if you're going to sell it, that makes it more valuable. Even if you never plan to sell it, it will run better. It will be more systematic. You will have more free time. You will be decoupled from the business. Quite honestly, this is a principle that I've been espousing for years and years, back from my first time in the early days reading the E-Myth Revisited, and the concept of building your business like a franchise prototype, as if you were going to multiply and have open several more locations in other places without you having to be there every day. How would you do that, right? You'd build SOPs, you'd have everything documented. It would run like clockwork, just like when they open McDonald's everywhere. And again, even if you never plan on selling it, or you're going to hand it down to your kids or whatever it might be, it's still the best way to run your business. All right, so now let's listen to a short little clip from Dave Hanna from G0 Machine, who did exactly this process.
We have all our processes and procedures in place that just really keep things rolling. When issues happen, they're not a big deal.
Right.
Bummer, but we know what to do to address it and how to move forward from that. So I'll easily be out of here in another 3.5 years.
And what does be out of here mean? Are you going to sell it to that employee, or will you just retain your ownership for years beyond that, or what does that look like to you?
He's getting a percentage of the company to start with. Keep drawing money. We'll just share the profits at a percentage, and then once it's viable for me to completely exit, I will sell the rest of the shares to him. But then I'll be of an age. So basically, I'll be taking a paycheck still and not working.
Not working. And I believe I understand that you're working a year and a half into this process. You're now working a lot less hours than you once did.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, I have to find things to do during the day now that it's going. I put in about 10 hours a week. If I come in before 10, there isn't something's wrong. So
you got to make sure you don't come in before 10 a.m.
Yeah. So what's going on? And I wear a shirt like today, and what's the matter? Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible, Dave. So I'd love to dig in a little bit to, you said this employee of yours expressed interest in being your succession plan. How did you even start that conversation? Did you meet with the whole company and say, hey, this is, I hope to sort of move on in 5 years? Who's interested in getting into management, or did you identify him as a real, go-getter, or can you explain about how that went?
Sure. Yeah. So I was wearing a lot of hats, and other people were doing stuff, but I wasn't releasing it fully to people. So I decided and kind of told the shop, hey, we need to start filling some of these positions. We need a full-time purchasing, we need full-time salesperson, or all the different roles that I was kind of touching, I wanted to get people into. And if anybody was interested, and Jack was one that he was right there and said, hey, I'd love to help out any way I can. And I said, great. And so we moved him into purchasing manager side. So I wasn't having to deal with material and outside processing quotes and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It took off, and I noticed he was doing better than anybody I'd ever had help with me in that position. He was doing phenomenal. And so, and I was noticing that, hey, I'm releasing some of this stuff. This might work if I actually start getting people in these roles, and we have all the processes in place to know that they're doing it correctly. And then I approached Jack one day and said, hey, I'd really like to start stepping away. He said, are you interested in being a general manager? And he said, sure. So I started the process. That was a year and a half ago. And it's crazy. I mean, I left for a month last year, went to Mexico. I left for 2 weeks already this year. I'm going to be leaving for another week. And it's just, there's no heartache. There's no coming back to a mess or a nightmare. It's really good. They're out there. It's just a matter of giving people a chance to prove themselves, and to prove themselves where they don't fail. You can show them, okay, hey, let's try this, and don't worry if this happens. We're going to be okay. We have a plan in place, type of thing. So,
yeah, I'd love for you to dig a little bit more into that. The process of letting go, of delegating, and your own feeling about that, and instilling confidence in Jack and your other teammates that they got this, they can do it. You believe in them, in the systems to make sure they're scaffolded well enough that they feel confident stepping forward to make those decisions. Can you just share a little bit about that process?
Sure. Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing for anybody that's an owner, and put your blood, sweat, and tears into something, and then you want to step back. I think selling would be great because then it's a cut and dry thing. But like I said, we've come to the realization that's be the best bet. So the letting go was difficult, and trusting people, but I put the trust in them, and I made sure that it wasn't going to be detrimental to the company if they did something wrong, so it was baby steps and letting them do things. I could complete tasks and then show me, yep, you're right on track. That's great. That's the way you do that. Or, no, don't do this because of these reasons or whatever. So it was interesting, that it kind of actually helped. I mean, he built up some of our relationships with our customers even better because he was in more communication than I was at the time, because I was just frantically trying to touch every process and every procedure.
Right.
So letting go has really made the company flourish. So it gives me a lot of time to spend on sales.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, what do you guys think of that quote? What I love about the way Dave Hanna built that business is, well, actually, quite honestly, I think it actually points back to the first three pillars and principles we already talked about earlier in this episode, right? The power of being process-based, having a great culture, the importance of more detailed planning, but really those first two more than anything, and Dave very successfully has, had executed something that I think many shop owners hope to do in their business, is build something that doesn't actually really need them anymore, right? They can come in 10 hours a week like Dave, has decided to do, take a month-long vacation and have the business, thrive and run smoothly without them. It's not a big chaotic mess when they come back. That takes a certain amount of skill to delegate well like that. to empower people, to make them feel like they have confidence that, even if they make mistakes, you're not going to come down too hard on them. It takes, as Dave talked about, those baby steps of, try something, review it, give them feedback, and then let them, take on more and more. So, yeah, I think it just kind of shows that when you can sort of embody these principles, like really major transformational things are possible. And hopefully that's something that resonates and sounds realistic and feasible, because I know there's a lot of shops out there that are very much not in that place. And the owners do feel like they've sort of bought themselves a job. And it's, that real freedom that they probably envisioned when they originally started their business or bought their business just hasn't come to fruition. So anyway, I'm just a big fan of what Dave has been doing there. So as we close the book on this 100th episode, I want to leave you with a few final thoughts and additional wisdom from guests. When I started Machine Shop Mastery, I thought we were going to talk about metal, machines, and margins, and we did to some degree. But as I look back on these first 99 conversations, a blueprint has emerged. And it's not just a blueprint for making parts. It's really a blueprint for building a life and a legacy in this industry by doing meaningful work in the most important, yet difficult industry of all, as you've heard me say many times. We can make it all a little bit less difficult with some of the lessons we learned today in these 4 pillar ideas. So for a quick summary of those, first, we must respect the power of process. We heard that from our very first guest on episode 1, Scott Shortess of Advanced Machining and Fabrication, who gave us an important rule: a bad process will break a good person every time. So we cannot ask our teams to be heroes in a broken system. And Dave Capkovitz of CK Tooling in episode 35 told us that turning into process-based thinking was exponential in profit for his business. Other guests we didn't have the time to pull direct quotes from today include Brad Kozlowski from Kozlowski Advanced Manufacturing on episode 19, who reminded us that process isn't a one-time event only, but a daily discipline of process control. And I will note that that discipline and model he espoused created a very valuable company that was acquired by Adman Advanced Metals, or the Adman Group, a couple of years ago. We heard from countless other guests that becoming process-based was a huge financial win for their company and made their companies better places to work. So hopefully you take that into your own business. Speaking of better places to work, second, in our pillar, we talk about culture and core values, which is no surprise as you hear me talk over all these episodes. If process is the brain of a shop, culture is the heart. And we heard quotes from Eric Wilhelm and John Shenga of KMM Group on episode 22, that your culture is like dirt, and if you fertilize it and cultivate it, the right things will grow. Justin Quinn from Focused on Machining on episode 4 discussed how critical it was for him when it came to his employees, and reminded us that having a well-defined culture that people lean on and love will take your business to heights that you never thought it could go to. Again, other guests we didn't have time to hear directly from included Anissa Mutana from Pioneer Service in episode 15. She taught us that values aren't just the words on a wall, they are the standard. She told us the way she thinks about employees: if you get in the way of our values, you are not a good fit, even if you are very talented. That directly echoes what we heard from Justin. And then Kristen Carlson from Peerless Precision on episode 9, she said that when she fired an employee that was a cancer to the culture, she said it was life-changing for us. Everyone started being more productive, and the whole mood of the shop improved. Cody Guidry from Coastal Machine and Supply on episode 39 reminded us of one human element: people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I love that quote, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, having been there, that they care deeply at Coastal, and it really has driven that business. I also love the idea from Mike Tomasi from AccuRounds on episode 42, who showed us that gratitude can be so powerful for culture that they made gratitude their 5th core value. And then the third pillar we embraced today was the strategic imperative of having really good job planning. I know this seems kind of in the weeds, but it's so important. We must stop shooting from the hip out on our shop floors. We got deep into that with several quotes from Mark Heston on his first episode of episode 51. And then again, other guests we didn't have time to pull direct quotes from include Nate Bourgeois from Ouroboros On episode 48, he argues that planning your work holding and operational strategy have the greatest impact on your final component, even more than the toolpaths themselves. Some very tactical advice from Nate. And then finally, our fourth pillar of the day, we strive to build a business that doesn't need us. This is the ultimate act of stewardship and strength, quite honestly. Mike Fritz from Quick Tech Machining told us to run your business like you're going to sell it, because it forces you to build real value and decouple yourself from the daily operations, which makes your business far more valuable. That was reinforced by Dave Hanna, that the idea of retiring a hat, slowly giving away responsibilities so others can rise, which he's done very successfully. And then one last guest we didn't have time to hear from today, but had some great advice, was James Marzilli from Marzilli Machine in episode 8, who gave us this golden rule of scaling and building systems that don't need you. He said that if he has someone build a system and it has his name in it, if Jamie has to do it, then he knows that'll break and it has to get rewritten. Those three ideas really resonated with me personally, because we did exactly that at Pro CNC. Replacing ourselves in the last few years of our shop before we sold it to start ProShop. We would not have had the same success if we were still mired in the daily business. But one of the things I love most about these episodes and these guests are not just the tactical strategies that make a business better, but the human moments of humanity that we've heard so many times on these last 99 episodes. Here's just a few that really stand out for me. Ashley Hunsager of HTS Coatings on episode 67 shared how she and her husband were almost unable to start the business, couldn't get their loan because they couldn't get life insurance for her after the insurance company said that she was worth more to her husband dead than alive because she was a housewife originally. That was a real tearjerker of an episode for me. We've heard more than a few stories of families having to pick up the pieces and persevere after the death of a family member. In episode 50 with Ashley Parent of Mills Machine Works, she talks about the death of her father from cancer and how she and her siblings had to figure out how to save the business. And she got that strength she learned from her own battle with cancer, which she shared near the end of the episode. That was a surprise. And after that episode, just a little note here, after that episode came out, she got a lot of support from lots of people in the industry that helped out Mills. And she recently shared on LinkedIn that not only was the company thriving, but another shop that they knew had seen their struggle, seen how they responded, and that they decided they wanted Mills to buy their business and have it in the hands of the Mills family. So I was so thrilled to hear that. And she is actually going to share that in another upcoming episode that's coming up in a few episodes here. So stay tuned for that. We've also sat in periods of great darkness with guests like Gabe Draper on episode 94, who shared bravely the story of losing his shop, recalling his lowest heart-wrenching moment of sitting in the bank with his pregnant wife as she bawled her eyes out while they took out loans to personally pay their expenses while the business closed down. Yet he was still made sure that every one of his employees found a new job with shops around the area without missing a single paycheck before he closed the doors. And then, of course, that experience led him to start Factur so he could help other shops not go through the same thing. And Gabe's story is not the only one we've heard about loss on this show. We have 3 others, starting with episode 64 with Jeremy Rogers, who closed down his shop after losing several key employees and the tribal knowledge that they took with them. Mark Heston came back on episode 89 to tell the story of having to shut down Collinear after a crazy series of events. You really have a hard time believing him unless you hear the story directly. And similarly, on episode 90, Cody Sisson told us how burnout and medical issues had led him to lose his business, Sisson Engineering. These stories really make you pause and understand just how fragile a business can be. We've heard countless other stories of extreme sacrifice, underscoring how challenging both entrepreneurship is and, as I say many times, running a machine shop is. From, 100+ hour weeks to extreme financial stress, major setbacks, and crushing losses. We heard the amazing story from Bill Cox just last episode 99, whose mom asked him if he wanted to take over the business at the age of 12 when his father died. And he later told us that years later, he had to sell his personal home in order to save the business from bankruptcy. But all that trial and sacrifices led them to the point where they are today, where they have a thriving business with over 200 spindles. I got to visit that shop on an NTMA tour about a year ago. It was really amazing. And another example and a sneak peek here, which you have not actually heard, but there's an episode coming up where an owner talks about taking out $1 million personal loan to cover payroll during COVID, so he didn't need to lay off a single employee. Truly amazing. So keep your ears peeled for that one coming soon. But of course, we've also had lots of wonderful stories. It's not just all hard news. We have some really heartwarming stories about incredibly generous people in this industry. Immediately to mind comes Court Durkalski of Trueline Industries on episode 78, who during the 2008 crisis stood in front of his leadership team and said that they were going to keep doing their charitable giving that they had been doing for years because, as he says, those are the people we are doing this for, even when it was a really hard financial decision. And that commitment of giving 10% of their gross sales has cumulatively totaled to over $40 million donated to charities around the world. It's truly inspiring and a testament to what a strong business with heart and a strong mission can accomplish. While on the topic of being charitable, Ann Dyke from Dyke Machine on episode 21 shared that in the year before we recorded, they had donated $1 million to a school that they were involved with. And they only have 35 employees. It's not like it's a massive company. Imagine having that much profit to be able to donate $1 million in a year. It's really amazing. And it also, I think, speaks to how successful a machine shop can be when it's run really well and effectively. So it is now time to wrap up this episode for real. I hope you've been inspired by all the amazing guests you've learned from on the show. They and people like you are the absolute soul of this industry. It is built by people who embrace the grind, treat teams like family, and who realize that we are all in this together. I am genuine when I say this. You are all heroes of our economies. So please do me a favor, give us a rating on Apple or Spotify and share the show with someone who you think might be helped by these stories. And lastly, go check out the 9 other shows in the Making Chips Network. I don't know if you realize that. We have 9 shows. You can see them all on the makingchips.com website. There are so many great episodes, hosts, and guests on those shows. So thank you again for lending me your ears for the first 100 episodes of Machine Shop Mastery. We'll see you next week on episode 101.
Hey, Paul, next year's 2026. Guess what happens?
That means it's an even year, which means IMTS is happening.
I'm so excited. And I assume Pro Shop will be there exhibiting again, as always.
Yeah, it'll be our 5th time, I think.
Wow.
Would have been 6 if COVID hadn't happened. But yeah, even after being there that many years, there's a lot to understand about that show. It is a massive event, massive execution to exhibit.
Well, and a big investment, right? It's, gosh, your time, your money.
It is a big investment. Yeah, it's one of our biggest marketing investments for sure.
Well, I'm looking forward to in January, you and Nick and I are going to be at the IMTS Exhibitor Workshop where exhibitors can come and learn like how to get their most out of IMTS.
Yeah, the workshop is fantastic. There's a bunch of different benefits from it. One, you can connect with all the vendors for your furniture, for your logistics, getting all your stuff in and out of the show, electrical, everything. But this year, they're also doing an executive session or series. So really focused on getting the most out of the conference. How are you going to go in with a marketing plan, really execute it, and get your maximum ROI if you're exhibiting at the show?
Well, it's a major commitment to go to the show. I mean, I go as an attendee, but seeing all the work that goes into it, if I was exhibiting, I would definitely want to maximize my experience there and get the most out of it. And the workshop I know is going to be interactive where they really work through things. Like you said, you can place the orders, all that type of stuff. And, that's going to bring a bunch of value to exhibitors.
Yeah, absolutely. The difference between coming with a plan and executing on that, it's a big difference as opposed to just showing up, throwing up your booth and hoping for the best. So yeah, it's definitely advisable. So exhibitors that want to make more of it, whether they're first time exhibitor or even if they've done it many times, but they really want to maximize their ROI this time, they should definitely show up at this thing. And what are the dates again?
Yeah, so it's January 27th through 29th at the McCormick Place. So you kind of get familiar with where your booth's going to be and all that type of stuff. To find out more, people should just go to amtonline.org/events and get signed up, and we'll see you there in January.
Sounds good, Mike.